Hi, everybody. This is Maya, and today is day 8 of Novel Prep Month, and we're going to get started working on our characters. Now that you have your one sentence summary and your one paragraph summary, you should have at least a short idea of characters that are going to be in your story. You probably have a main character, which would be your protagonist. You might have somebody that is working against that main character, or you know that that main character has a friend or a family member who's going to be an integral part of the story. That's what we're going to start working on today. But before we get started, I need to give my disclaimer. I'm not a professional writer. I haven't been published professionally yet. I am just someone who has failed National Novel Writing Month so many times that I've learned a lot in the process of learning how to complete National Novel Writing Month. And really, this series is meant to take you from initial idea to feeling confident on day 1 of November. So let's get started. We're going to break this up. So rather than me giving you a list of things that you need to do for every single character and then sending you on your way, I really want to break this portion down into bite-sized pieces, because knowing your characters, like truly knowing your characters, will make writing not only more fun, but a lot easier. There's going to be times during National Novel Writing Month where you run into a roadblock and perhaps your outline isn't working for you. There's scenes that are missing, or maybe your character is doing something that just doesn't feel right. And the more you know and understand your character, the easier it will be for you to look at your character and say, what would you do next? And your character be able to answer you back. So let's start with just the initial idea. So far, you have daydreamed about your character, and you kind of have a basic idea of the basic plot throughout the book, just the overreaching idea of the book. So, what I want you to do is to sit down and write down how many characters you know you're going to need right now. That number may grow, probably will. It always has in my case. I never truly know all the characters that are going to be involved until towards the end of my outlining process, and often there's a couple extra people that sneak in during the writing. But what I want you to do is just give yourself a short list of how many people right now you think are in your book. So when you do the short list, you're not going to have names yet. You're just going to write female protagonist who is a serial killer, male antagonist who is a young FBI agent. Maybe the serial killer has a best friend. Okay? You're just going to write that way. Now, what I want you to do is to start to visualize them. Most people start with the names first. It's much easier to have an idea of a character if you know the name of the character. But names are really interesting. And while I could send you to a name generator, I don't think I personally, if I just go to a name generator and just pull a name out of thin air, I don't get as much character building juice out of that name. So, what I want you to think about right now as you're coming up with the names for your characters is think about your day to day life. How many people have you met who truly don't fit their names? Personally, I haven't met very many. I'm a Maya. It's pretty obvious I'm a Maya. I've always been a Maya. And when I meet other Mayas, there are certain things we have in common. I very rarely met a Sarah that doesn't look and feel like a Sarah, or a Jason that doesn't look and feel like a Jason. And personally, this is how I like to approach names. I like to approach them kind of psychologically and use them as a part of the character building. So rather than picking a name randomly or picking a name symbolically, I like to do what the parent of the character would do. So when we get our names, usually it's from our family when they're pregnant with us. So what influences what our parents name us? They are going to be influenced by their character, by their culture. They're going to be influenced by the time that they were in. They're going to be influenced by their personal um, political leanings or how they look at the world. And those are all going to go into what makes up your name. I would also like to add one more element. I would also like to add that the few people I've met who truly don't fit their names often had mothers who were really disconnected during the pregnancy and sometimes didn't have great relationships with their moms. Maybe their mom didn't want to be pregnant or was kind of checked out or was really depressed and didn't have a sense of that baby. Now, as a mom, I can tell you that my kids got their names at different points in the pregnancy. And once they had their name, I couldn't change it because they were that name. And so I want you to consider this when you think of your character. So, your main character, if they're a mess, why are they a mess? Did they have a bad upbringing? Is there something going on with their family? And how does that come out in their name? So, if you have a character who is damaged in some way because they aren't close to their family, maybe they were abused, maybe their name doesn't fit their personality. Or if you have a character who is super, super conservative, and that is because their family, maybe they come from raging hippies, maybe they have like a raging hippie name that they try to make normal sounding. Like these are all things that I feel like names give us an opportunity to build character rather than just a label. So this is what I want you to think about when you're thinking about your character's name. And then go out in the world and look around. Go to the grocery store and see what people are named. Say hello to people and get a sense of what a Sarah feels like, what a Catherine feels like, what a Jason feels like, what a Sing feels like. Like get an idea of that. Now there are some really great resources to help fit names in time and place. Ancestry.com is great for this. A lot of times you can do like a free like 30-day trial or whatever, and or sometimes you can get access to like a portion of the database and get an idea of what names were really common during certain time periods. That's how I got the name of the mother, well, the great 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 grandmother in the book Past was I actually took that name from slave records coming out of New Orleans, and I got those names through ancestry.com. Also, you can do simple Google searches. You can search top Asian names in 1942. You can search typical American names in the 70s, things like that. These are all things to really help you use a name to cement your character in time and place. And that way you're really getting the most juice out of those names. Now, in addition to naming your characters, today I also want you to think about what their goal is and what is standing in their way. So every person has a personal goal, even if they aren't, even if that personal goal isn't directly part of the main plot of the story. This is how we, in the end, we develop all of our subplots, and this is how our side characters feel like full people instead of feeling just like they're there to prop the main character up. Every person has goals in life. So I want you to name your characters today. And also I want you to, for each character, say, what is their goal and what is standing in their way? And it doesn't have to be the perfect goal, just the main thing. Imagine the character sitting in front of you and you say to them, what do you want out of life right now? What would they tell you? And this is the point where it's okay to talk to yourself. Burgess Taylor recently did a video talking about hearing her characters, and it made me smile because I go one step further. If you, most people, by this point, you might have some scenes in your head that you're kind of imagining that feel juicy, and that when you think about it, you're like, ooh, I think my character's gonna, I think my character's gonna do this or say that. When you're alone, imagine you're that character and have that monologue. I did this last year in the car as I was driving. I was holding on a two-way conversation between two of my characters. And that conversation is what made me realize that one of my characters was in love with the other character, but knew it wasn't possible and was really struggling to distance himself from that character's trauma. That came out of me talking to myself in my car. And when I say talking to myself, I'm not just saying like I'm sitting in the car saying, da 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 da. No, like hand motions, like postures. If you get enough into character, you'll find little things that your character does. So it's like, okay, when Paul is upset, he like chews his cheek. Or when Claire is pissed, she clenches her fists. And those are things you find out when you get in character and you have those arguments in the privacy of your own home. And then you discover these little mannerisms of your character. And so give yourself permission to maybe act out a scene or two when you're alone. And if you find little physical traits of various characters, write them down. Just jot down what they are. You know, if you discover one of your characters is an ex-smoker, and when they're upset, they start doing this business, write that down. Or maybe they start chewing their nails, write that down. Because these are all things that later on down the line are going to really fill out your character and make them more real. So what you're doing today, you're not doing a full character sketch. You have 3 jobs. You're going to, well, 4. You're going to write down the characters that you know of so far. You're going to think about their names on a more holistic level. So rather than picking names you like or names you enjoy, I want you to think about when your novel takes place, how old your characters are about, and then use that information to find names that are appropriate for that time, that culture, and that parental family unit. Okay? Once you find the names, I also want you to think about each character, even if that means talking to yourself and pretending that you are that character, and write down what is that character's main goal in life right now? What is their goal? And what is standing in their way? So if your serial killer's main goal is to kill somebody and not get caught, and what's standing in their way is to keep exposing themselves because they're in love with the cop, there you go. If you have a young lady whose main goal is to have a strong professional career and become the director of something, and what's standing in the way is they're losing their mind, there you go. What's standing in their way may be another person, it may be a situation, it may be themselves, it may be self-doubt, it may be emotion, it could be anything. So don't censor yourself. Write down your first thoughts. What does this character want, and what is standing in their way? And then I'll see you tomorrow and we'll get deeper into these characters. Ciao.